Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to the Sqwatchers today. Sqwatchers are Jim Peters and Joe Jenkins, and they're going to be sharing about what they've been involved with down in southern Illinois, specifically Garden of the Gods. And I was connected with these two gentlemen from a good friend, Joe Turry, from Red Room Creative Media. You may have seen his documentary Creature from Big Muddy, perhaps, but if you haven't, definitely go check it out. I've talked to him in the past, but welcome to the show, guys. How's it going?
Oh, it's good. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I've had a few episodes so far about this Garden of the Gods area, and it is just, there's some really interesting stuff coming out of it. I've even done a little bit of calling different places around the area, and it's a very, very interesting area. But it sounds like you guys have also experienced some stuff in this area yourself.
We have. Garden of the Gods is just, it's a beautiful place, but there's also the Garden of the Gods wilderness, and the wilderness encompasses all around it, surrounding forests and bluffs. I've lived down here since I was 17, and I'm 67 now. I'm Joe Jenkins, 67 now. I've had 40 years law enforcement down this area, and just have been throughout the woods. It's a beautiful area to come, but the Garden of the Gods is a special place. There's no doubt about it. I'll let Jim tell you.
Yeah, okay, just so you know, I'll give you a little background. My name is Jim Peters, and I'm the same age as Joe. We've been friends since second grade, and I moved down to southern Saline County in 2019, and I'm about 15 minutes from Garden of the Gods where I live, and my property backs up to Shawnee National Forest, so we have woods all around us, and me and Joe kind of started hiking the river-to-river trail, and that's how we kind of got into this, because we liked hiking, and we were going to go from our original, thing was, let's go all the way across the state, and we never made that. But we started hiking and going through all the trails on the river trail, going across the state. And for the most part, it was just fun, and we were relaxed, and everything was cool. And then, we started experiencing some things that were a little out of the ordinary. And I can let Joe tell you, we had one particular trip we were walking in to our area, hiking into this bluff area where we like to camp. And we had stopped along this creek in this valley. There's bluffs on both sides of us there. And this is right in the Garden of the Gods wilderness area. And we stopped, and we could hear these footfalls on the top of this bluff over to our left. It was across the creek and up on top, and we could hear them, and they were very, very loud, and you could kind of feel them, because they were like thump, 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 and you'd never be able to hear a person walking up there, but it was something bipedal walking up there and
on top of the bluff.
And as you're standing there, it was so close, you think you're going to see it any time. It's going to walk right up to the edge of the bluff, and you're going to be looking at it, whatever it is. But that never happened. And I went closer to the bluff, up underneath it, and put my hand on the side of the bluff there. I could actually feel the vibrations as it was walking, as I was feeling the bluff. Joe stayed back to kind of keep an eye on the top of the bluff to see if it made an appearance. And all of a sudden, just as fast as they started, they stopped. And I walked back out to him, and we didn't hear him anymore. We walked, about another half a mile, and decided, let's stop here.
And this was in the wintertime. There wasn't any foliage on the trees or anything. So we could see a long ways.
Yeah, and there was ice forming on the bluffs as the water was running over the bluffs, and was ice forming all the way down, which was very pretty actually. And Joe sat down on a rock there right in front of the bluff where the ice was coming down, and I was standing there with my back to the bluff where we heard the footsteps that was back that way about a half a mile. And as we were sitting there talking, there was a big old rock that got thrown, and it came over and it hit the ice above where Joe was sitting, and that whole ice sheet come down right behind Joe, crashing down. And of course he was getting out of the way, and we were both kind of stunned, like, what on earth? And that rock fell, and the ice fell. And we were like, that was one of our first experiences. I guess we weren't sure what it was, but it was like, wow, that is kind of interesting. And we didn't really go much farther than that. At that point, we were kind of weirded out. We decided to get out, so.
Well, at that point, Jim did climb part way up the bluff. We found a place where you could kind of get up closer to the top. And climbing up there, we found a shelter cave in the side of the bluff that you couldn't see from the ground. And all these rocks stacked.
They were flat.
Yeah, flat rocks.
Like they come out of the creek or a riverbed or something.
And they were stacked on top of one another, just kind of. You could see it once you got up there at that point, climbed up there, but you couldn't see it from the ground. We looked inside, see if there's anything in there. There wasn't. We couldn't get on up to the top of the bluff. And like Jim said, at that point, we just a little creeped out and come on back out, walked out. But the Garden of the Gods is just a very interesting place. We were, like Jim said, we were hiking. We just started doing that and decided, it's something we really enjoyed doing. And we were trying to, we got about a third across the state, but there was one place that kept bringing us back, and that was a bluff at the Garden of the Gods. And it's about 2 miles from the Garden of Gods area in the wilderness. And it's on the River Trail, but it's a bluff overhang that from that you can look out and just see Hardin County, Saline County.
You can even see into
Kentucky, Gallatin County. Now you're just above all the trees, just looking out over everything. Beautiful place to camp. And we just kept getting drawn back to that spot. And for some reason, really, after the experience that we had up there, we never went any farther. We started just kind of trying to stick around the Garden of the Gods there for a while.
We had camped there many times and never had really any kind of experience or anything, except it was just beautiful. And but one particular time we were up there on that bluff, and this bluff is about, I don't know, I'd say about 800 feet?
Yeah.
It's about 800 feet in elevation. And so we hike up there and we take our backpacks off. We're gonna stay the weekend up there. And so we're kind of getting our camp set up, and to the woods that was behind us, away from the bluff, we kept hearing this mechanical sound, almost like an electric drill or an electric saw of some sort. It was like kind of sound. It was really mechanical and and very electric. Like it was going to be electric sound, something. And I said, listen to that. And he listened, and we're like, what on earth could that be? Because, there's nothing up there. There's nothing there except woods and us. And so we decided we were going to, walk over into the woods there and see if we could, determine what was making that sound. Because it was loud, but not overly loud, but loud enough that you could hear it. And we're like, okay, let's go find it. So we walked towards it. It's doing it the whole time. And we walked towards the sound. And right when we get to where the sound is, it stops. And it starts up again about 50 yards from us in another direction.
Yeah, it's not that far off. I mean, when we got up from our campsite to walk over there to it, we could tell where the sound was coming from. It was just in the woods there. I mean, just 50, 75 feet. And it's like, okay, there's where it's coming from. So when we walked over there, like I said, it changed positions. We continued to go to the next spot, and it changed positions. And we're looking at each other kind of dumbfounded, because then we decided, well, let's split up. Jim hears it from over in one spot. I'm going to that spot. And I'd walk over to where he thinks it's coming from, and I'm hearing it, and it's in another place. It was never where we were.
It was playing with us, really. And that's kind of the thing that creeped me out when I first realized. I thought, this thing's like intelligent. It's messing with us, because we go to where the sound is and it moves and it starts up somewhere else. And then we go to there and it moves and it goes over here and starts up there. And I was really, I don't know if Joe was, but I know how I felt. I felt really weird about it, because I just was thinking, man, this thing seems to be intelligent. It knows where we're at, and it moves, and it's just playing with us. And this went on for probably 20 minutes at least, maybe 30 minutes. It was crazy how it would just keep moving around, even if we split up, and we could never catch up to it. And so it finally ended up stopping. And we kind of thought, well, it's not coming back. Let's go back to our campground. So we went back to the camp. It was, like you said, 50, 75 feet away.
Yeah, you could look and see it,
So we walked back there, and the rest of the night I was a little unsettled, because I just kept thinking something was there messing, and this sound never came back. It never came back the rest of the night. And it was really kind of the first thing on this bluff that was odd to us, because like I said, we had stayed there many nights before and had nothing. And then when we had this sound we were chasing around like crazy, trying to catch up to it, and we couldn't, that kind of had me going there for a little bit. I was a little unnerved and probably didn't sleep as well that night. We each have hammocks, and his hammock was probably 15 or 20 feet away from mine. And so I think I slept pretty light that night, because I was just kind of unnerved. And I don't know, you have to have that feeling, I guess. Most of the time, you feel pretty comfortable out there, sharing with nature and whatnot. But after that, I was kind of uncomfortable the rest of the trip out there that particular time.
Yes, it's amazing. We're talking about the same spot, and you can go out there and just spend the evening, and it's quiet, and you just feel one with nature, relaxed, and go to sleep. Jim's talking about his hammock. I'll tell you, at the same place, it's about 2 miles, probably a couple hour hike from the Garden of the Gods area out to this spot. And that's how you just know you're out there by yourself, it's just you. And we went out there one day and set up camp. And another incident on this spot, and we had our hammocks set up. And like I said, our hammocks are Tennessee hammocks, are between two trees. You climb in the hammock. It was time for us to go to bed. We've done talking and decided we were just going to turn in for the night. I climbed in my hammock, Jim in his. And the way these hammocks are designed is they have a netting. You zip yourself up in them. It has a netting, keeps the bugs and stuff out. So I get laid back here and open up my eyes, and I'm laying on my back looking at the stars. And normal night, like we've done 20 times before. And these hammocks are probably my hammock was probably about 2 feet off the ground, maybe a little more. And I'm just laying there looking at the stars, and something starts on the right side of my back and goes under the hammock, and I feel it rubbing my back, and it starts on my right side, goes all the way across, and goes out on my left side. Well, that was enough. I jumped up, grabbed my headlamp, which is in the, in the hammock with me, and I turned this headlamp on, and I'm looking. I mean, this thing, it felt like it feels like when a cat would rub up against you, and just kind of rub and move on. Well, and I thought, my first thought was it was a bobcat, or something to that effect. And I shine my flashlight and there's nothing there. Well, Jim, here's the commotion. I don't know what's going on. I told him, I said, get your light, see if you see anything underneath me. And he's looking around and there's nothing there. And upon checking more, I mean, we're up here on an area where there's been camping before, and we've moved around a lot. There wasn't any grass. It was all just kind of real fine dirt, dust, like in between the rocks. Well, there's nothing there. The only footprints that's there is mine. There's no footprints in the dirt. And yet I felt this thing just rub right across my back, started on one side and went out the other. That was a night that I did not sleep well the rest of the night either. Yes. There's definitely something different, I believe, about the Garden of the Gods area.
So at this point, neither one of us have really even thought about maybe any kind of a cryptid creature, a Bigfoot or anything like that. We never even thought about it. We just had some weird experiences and we were, curious about them, but, we weren't thinking, any kind of a cryptid thing yet. Matter of fact, I don't think until we probably turned, I don't know, in my late 50s till I was really kind of a believer or a knower. The one time that I'm going to talk about the experience that really led up to why we started doing this in the first place was we were at this same bluff that we had these other experiences. And this time we decided to take a friend with us. There was another guy come with us. And we hiked up the bluff and we're setting up our camp, and everything seemed normal as could be. It was a beautiful day. It was going to be cold that evening. We knew that. So we made sure we went out and collected all the firewood we were going to need for the night. And so we're here on this bluff and we get our campsite all set up. We get the firewood set there. And we knew, like I said, we knew it was going to be cold. So we have this, what do they call those? Reflective type blanket that we use some paracord, and we tied it up in between trees that kind of would reflect the heat back to us. And we just set out. Night had fallen. We had eaten our dinner, and we were just sitting around talking. And Tim, the guy that was with us, he goes over to the edge of the bluff. We're back a ways from the edge, and he's standing there, and he starts hollering, "Hey, come over here, come over here." So for whatever reason, Joe hung back. I went to see what he was talking about, and he's pointing into the sky, and he sees this light, and it was coming right at us. And I'm like, a lot of times in Garden of the Gods area, people get lost. They have helicopters come through with the shining lights to try to find people that are lost out there, because people get lost out there all the time. And so I thought, well, that's what it was. It's a helicopter coming straight at us, got a light on it, and it's looking for somebody that was lost. And couldn't find out, no, that's not what it was. It was not making any noise whatsoever. And it was very, very low. And it's just coming straight at us. And as me and him are standing there on the edge, it gets to where it's right on top of us. And it shines a light down on us. And this light's really bright, and it comes down, and it doesn't last very long. Maybe he only shines it on there for like maybe 3-4 seconds. And there it is. We're standing in bright light, and then boom, it's off, and the thing's moving on. So we kind of watched it. We kind of watched it as it went away from us. and didn't see the light turn on again. But so we were like, wow, that was really weird. That was some kind of like a UFO or something that was coming in, you know.
So by that time, I had got over there. I heard them hollering, and I got over towards the edge of the bluff where you could see past the trees and stuff. And they were telling me what was going on and what had happened. And I missed it. I didn't get to see any of it. But I could tell by their excitement, you know, something had happened. And so we sat around there talking about that for
the rest of the evening.
Yeah, the rest of the night.
Because that's weird. I mean, you know, having a light shine down on top of you like that. And so I guess it was we probably talked till around 12:30. And we stoked the fire and everybody climbed in their hammocks and we all turned in. And thinking, yeah, we got to see something. That was pretty cool. And next thing you know, I'm waking up and Tim's already up. He's stoking the fire. He had got up. I guess he was cold. He was out there stoking the fire, getting it all built back up. And by this time, it was probably about 3:30 or 4.
About 4 o'clock.
And so I get up and I'm standing there by the fire trying to warm myself up a little bit. And then that woke Joe up. And then now all three of us are standing there at 4 o'clock in the morning, just kind of by the fire. And stars are just wonderful. It's just so beautiful. And all of a sudden, as we are standing there, all of us just kind of talking and warming our hands, there is this howl that I don't even know if I can explain it. It was a whoop, but it was a long drawn out whoop. It was very, very long, drawn out. And it was so loud and so loud and so deep, I guess, too, that you could feel it in your bones. I mean, you could hear it. Yeah, you could definitely hear it. It was loud, very loud. But it was one of those things that you could feel as well. And I mean, it would rattle every bone in your body. You're sitting there and you're like, what on earth? And I know we all felt it. And
yes, like I said, we're on the bluff. So the sound to me was coming from across the valley on the other hillside that we had come down in order to get to this campsite. There's just one trail into it. And the sound was so loud, you could feel the concussion off of it. You could literally feel the vibration in your chest. and I'll go to my dying days knowing that was not a human.
There's no way a human could have it.
It was no animal that I know of indicative of that area at all. It was just so massively loud. You could tell this was massive, whatever was making this sound.
Yeah, I've said it before that it makes you feel small. It was so loud
Absolutely.
that it just makes you feel small. And because whatever made this was massive. It was huge. Had to be, because they're just, man, you just never heard anything like that before in our lives. And I mean, at this time, we're in our 50s, and we'd never heard anything like this before, or that loud, or anything that would vibrate you like that. And so we're both, or all three of us there, we're standing there, and we're stunned, really. You know, probably all three of us have our mouths hanging wide open.
Yeah.
And we're probably thinking.
I remember I looked at Jim, and we're all kind of just looking at each other because we're confused. But I remember looking at Jim and said, what in the world is that? And Jim, I'll never forget, he looked at me, he said, well, I can tell you, but I don't think you'd believe me.
Yeah, I told him, I had watched, you know, like everybody else, you know, we'd watched, you know, Finding Bigfoot before and all that kind of stuff, and heard what howls are supposed to sound like, or whoops are supposed to sound like. And that's what it sounded like, but I never heard anything like that, anything that loud. So I just told him, I said, you know, I've heard that before, and, you know, from TV shows and YouTubes and videos and whatnot, and it sounds like that could have been a Bigfoot.
I think we have the recording of that, right, guys?
Yeah, you might have it.
This says first half.
Yep, I'm going to play it right now here for us.
All right. It, and that.
Are you kidding me?
I got that started us down this road.
Like, am I in the zoo? Like, that's crazy. That's like the gibbon exhibit, man. We gotta play it one more time. Just real quick. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh, Thinker Thunker would have a field day with that. Holy mackerel.
Dude, the hair on my arms are standing. It just brings it back so clear.
That is the sound.
So so now we're all standing there wondering what we just heard. And before we could hardly do anything else, from the north, now this is a valley that's running north and south, and to the north, we heard another one. Same thing. It was a whoop, much shorter whoop. It wasn't drawn out like that, but it was farther away and a lot fainter. I mean, you could hear it playing, but it didn't rattle your bones or anything. But it was probably who knows how long.
Couple miles north of the Garden of the Gods towards Equality.
So there was a response to this whoop from there. And I would imagine if you were standing by that other one, it would have felt just as loud. But from where we were at, it was much fainter, but you could definitely hear it. And we're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, because once we heard that sound, as confused as we were, not knowing what this was, when you hear something respond to it and answer it, it blew our minds. At that point in time, I thought Jim's right. That was the only thing that I could think of that could make it sound that loud that it would vibrate through our chest.
I just kept thinking, man, we're surrounded. Oh my gosh, they're everywhere.
So we're wide awake at this point.
Yeah.
And we walk out to the edge of the bluff. Mainly we're listening because, we're expecting to hear something again.
I want to add that too. We're looking out over the tops of trees. Okay. And it was, I don't know, if Garden of the Gods area when it's nighttime, there's no lights there, right? And when it gets dark, you can't see the guy standing right next to you or your hand in front of your face, especially if the moon's not around. If the moon's out, you can, but if the moon's gone, and there was no moon this particular night, and it's dark. So as we were looking out over the bluff, we would have been able to see anything that was, if it made a light or somebody had a headlamp on or somebody even lit a cigarette out there, you'd been able to see it because it would have lit up like in this total blackness. So we didn't see anything, and we were just still intently listening, not hardly talking at all, just listening and looking out over the blackness. And that's when we heard the other stuff.
Started hearing chatter. At the time we just heard people talking. I mean, we're still trying to rationalize what this was, and we hear what sounds like voices, but we can't make out what they're saying. It even sounded like maybe a couple of male and a female voice all together talking, going along the bottom of the bluff. We're on top of it. We're hearing this conversation is speaking, but we can't understand a word that they're saying.
And not only that, it's the reason we can't understand what they're saying is because they're not talking any kind of language that we know, right? They're not talking like even Japanese, or they're talking gibberish, like blah, 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 like almost like the Sierra sounds. If you've heard the Sierra sounds, that's kind of what it sounded like as far as what we were hearing. It was just this craziness.
But in our minds, at first, we just thought it's got to be people.
That's what you thought. I didn't think that at all.
I did. I thought, well, somebody's down there. They're talking. I can't understand a word they're saying, but they're in the complete darkness, and you don't walk through the Garden of the Gods. I mean, there's rattlesnakes, there's copperheads, there's water moccasins. You don't walk through there in the middle of the night at 4:30 in the morning in pitch black. That's just not a very smart thing to do. So we keep looking for lights.
He's thinking people. We don't necessarily think alike. He thinks, you know, everything's half empty.
He already decided that it was a Bigfoot. At the time, I was confused as to what it was.
No, it didn't sound like anything to people and me. It sounded like gibberish.
Do we have a recording of that? Sorry.
I do. We do have some. I don't know if did we send him? We don't have a recording of that particular night one, but I think we might have had a recording sent to you on some kind of chatter. I don't know if he did or not.
I think I'm going to play something just in case.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a recording we did that sounded like, honestly, like singing type, like a melody, but it was
nowhere.
It was in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of the night, you know, where we get these knocks and different sounds we recorded.
But I wouldn't say it was much unlike that to me. It was just like, you know, this gibberish. I'm thinking Bigfoot. I don't know what he's thinking, but I'm thinking there's got to be something down there. So I decide at that particular point, I'm just going to do a holler myself. I thought, you know, I've seen it on Bigfoot, finding Bigfoot all the time. They get up there and they go, okay, let's do a holler in 10, you know, and then the next person hollers. Well, I decide I'm just going to do one too, because I'm thinking, okay, let's see if I can get a response. Well, I did one, and when I was done, you could hear a pin drop in that forest. You could hear a pin drop. There was no chatter. There was no nothing. No nothing. And I always have thought since then that if there was somebody else out there, they would have hollered back just to, you know. And so I knew right then that this was not other people out there. And matter of fact, we had not seen anybody all weekend.
No.
We hadn't seen hide nor tail of anybody all weekend. So I knew there probably wasn't anybody out there. But like I said, after I did that holler, it got dead quiet. I mean, it was pin drop. And we just stood there. I bet we stood there for another 35 or 40 minutes. Not a sound. You know, we're hoping for one. We're hoping to hear something else. And not a sound.
To straighten it up, you know, like I said, Jim said he had been watching a lot of these shows, and he's the one that said, you know, I think it sounded like a Bigfoot. I hadn't been watching a lot of them. I didn't know what chatter was, so the only thing that my mind could rationalize is it sounded like somebody talking, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. And the crazy thing about it is that we mentioned that there was one trail that went up to where we were, that come down from the hillside where we heard the howl. But when you're going through that canyon, there's a Y, and it goes off and comes up to where we're at. But if you went straight, which is the way the voice is sounding was going, the chatter was going, is it was heading north, which is really interesting because when it made the first howl, and then we hear the chatter going down through the canyon below us, it's heading north towards where that other howl come from. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, well, after we sat there for about another 40 minutes or so listening, this is the crazy thing. We all got back in our hammocks and went to sleep. Now, I know that's kind of odd because as I think back on it now, I'm thinking, why would I have done that? Because I was pretty scared when I heard that, to be honest with you. I was big. And I'm thinking, why would we do that? And we've talked to other researchers about that particular, why would we just go back in our hammocks? And it's not necessarily unusual that would happen because you are kind of stunned at the time with it, and they've explained having the same kind of thing where, well, why didn't I go investigate that, later? Why didn't I do this? And they said there's really no exclamation. It just sometimes that kind of happens, but that's what we did. We ended up back in our hammocks for another a couple hours.
What one researcher, David Eller, told us about that, because if you asked me what the craziest thing was that night, it wouldn't have been the howl. It was that I climbed back in the hammock, went back to sleep. To this day, I couldn't figure that out. But he did say, he said, you've been through something that your brain can't explain. He said, and your brain just wants to get back to normal. He said, and going back to bed was probably the most normal thing you could do at that point in time. And I thought, well, that possibly makes sense. The trail we're talking about, if whatever that made that sound that was walking below us, if it had turned to the left and come up the path, it would have come right by us. Yet we climbed in our hammocks and all went back to sleep. Very, very strange, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. So that would have been our really big experience up there. Have we been back? Yeah, we've been back. We wanted to go back because we wanted to hear it again. And that set us off on this whole thing for us where we wanted to do more research. I mean, some people would hear that and just go home and never do anything about it. And me and Joe are the type that we're going to go and we're going to try to figure out what it was and what, can we want to know what did that. And that set us off on, well, now it's been like 12 years
yes,
of research and our own research where we started off with just handheld recorders, little $30 Samsung held recorders. And because we couldn't go out and camp everywhere all the time, we decided we'd get these recorders, we'd put them up in different areas. So we could hike in and we could tape up a recorder to a tree, and then we could hike out and we could go somewhere else and put another one up. And so we were trying to put these in very remote areas where we could rule out, there's a house close. Well, we wouldn't put it close to a house or that sort of thing. So we were putting them out away from everything so that the stuff that we hear, wasn't contaminated by other human beings. And what we found after doing that for probably a couple years, that's all we did was just do audio recordings. And we found out that there was, at least we noted 3 different sites or 3 different areas in the Garden of the Gods area that were really, really active with sounds and whoops and hollers and tree knocks and all this stuff. So once we could determine that these 3 areas, man, they are hot, they are really, really active, then we would go back in, and do a lot of physical research. We'd go in, look through the area, looking for prints, looking for tree breaks, looking for, any kind of a structure in the area. And we've been able to find several structures and several tree breaks and footprints and over the time in these areas. And they have stayed active really for the whole time. I would say for the last 10 years, these 3 sites have been really, really active, especially in the fall and in the spring, through the winter too a little bit, but not much in summer. I gotta say that. But
I would love to play some of maybe another sound if that's all right, and kind of now that I know that there's the file names are starting to make sense. That as you're talking, you have these different sites, and I'm kind of curious. I'm going to play this one here. So that's the kind of things you're hearing in this area.
Yes. Yeah. It was like 4. I think that's the one. There was like 4 different howls on that one.
That's site 3, isn't it?
Yeah, site 3.
I mean, Yeah, side three.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell by that howl. That was, yeah, it was like 4 howls all together strung in that. And that was a very, that place there is absolutely in the middle of nowheres.
Mm.
So the sound that we got there was just, and you spend, I have to give Jim props. Jim does most of the listening on this. And, he'll put a recorder out, and we'll go out in the evening before it gets dark and start a recorder and put it on a tree. Go back and pick it up next day. Well, that's 12, 13 hours, and Jim's sitting there listening to nothing but crickets.
Yeah, I do. I listen to most of them.
Mm.
Joe has a studio and a recording studio, and I take the sounds from there and offload them into his studio where we can hear them better. I mean, a speaker on a $30 recorder isn't very good, but I listen to them all in real time, and then so I have a lot of times where it's nothing. I could look at crickets all night long, but it's like fishing, all of a sudden, boom, there it is. You get this holler or this tree knock or whatever, and it kind of keeps you going. But I've listened to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of audio, and we've actually ended up with a database of probably roughly 200, close to 200 audio clips of tree knocks and stuff we can't explain. There's stuff on there we don't have any clue what it could possibly be. And
a mechanical sound in the middle of the woods.
Yeah, we did catch a mechanical sound. It's one of those things where that's how we started, and then we kind of branched out and decided, let's get, parabolic mic, and let's get, thermal, and let's get night vision. And so we started branching out and started buying the equipment we were going to need to do, the research that we do. And we finally, over the years, just kind of got stocked up, and now that's what we do. And matter of fact, there's people from all over that call us and say, hey, I've got something, do you want to come research it? And we will go and research for them as well. But there's a lot of areas that we don't even really have to leave the Garden of the Gods wilderness area, because we have 3 sites right there that are active all the time.
Yeah, we're in Jim's in Saline, and I'm in Hardin County, and every recording that we have has come from one of those 2 counties, and pretty much, and most of the photos that we have come from those 2 counties just here in Southern Illinois by the Garden of the Gods. Now we have went out, like I said, if someone got hold of us and said, hey, I got something I want you to look at, or we went halfway across the state. We went as far as up around Springfield area.
Wow. Have there been reported visuals in the Garden of the Gods area?
Yes.
Yeah.
BFRO has one.
Okay.
Right there in the parking lot of the backpackers parking lot. I think there was a visual there BFRO has.
Somebody was coming down from Indian Point, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like a girl and her dad, I think, were coming down.
And I'll say this, we have 4 photos of cryptids that's from the area right in there.
Yeah.
In those 2 counties,
Which, like I said, I'm 15 minutes from Garden of the Gods. So, and Joe was probably about 15 minutes from Garden of the Gods, just the other direction. And so all these, we do have cryptid pictures of Bigfoot in that area ourselves. And they're all right there. I mean, you could consider it all Bigfoot, the Garden of the Gods wilderness area. So, yeah, and I think, said Joe said, I think there's at least 1 sighting. There's a lot of people heard things all
around that. Yeah, around that area, there's a BFRO sighting between Garden of the Gods and Equality, I think, where they saw something with a thermal, it seems like. There's several in the area of BFRO.
Most of them, wait a minute. There was a woman and her husband on the trail, right? She said they passed it, and she thought it was like a guy with some kind of coat on or something. She thought, and they backed up, and I guess it was gone. But Yes, I think that's a sighting that's on there too.
And I will tell you this, that since we started doing this, I've been more open in my county. Like I said, I've worked for 40 years in law enforcement in Hardin County area. And I'm pretty much retired now. But, at first we didn't mention, hey, there's I heard this, I saw this. I don't know what, I didn't talk to people about it, It's got to the point that we have found so much stuff. We've casted footprints. We've got photos of structures. We've got recordings of all the sounds that we have. We have 4 pictures of what just looks like a Bigfoot. I'm to the point now that I just will tell people, well, here's what I think and here's why. I carry a photo album in my truck. So if anybody wants to explain to me what it is I've got, I'm all for that. Give me another explanation. Once they start looking through the photo album and see our pictures and stuff, they look pretty confused too at times. So in doing that, I've also had so many stories that people's like, well, let me tell you what happened to me. And
these are all stories around our area, right?
Yeah, these are all coming from the Shawnee National Forest here in these 2 counties, really. And it's amazing the other stories that people have told since we started being more bolder about what it is we're doing.
I think we both started when we started. You don't want people to think you're crazy, but like you said, as we started getting more and more into it, you just can't not say something. I remember a guy once said that there's 3 kinds of people in the Bigfoot industry. You have people who believe, people who don't believe, and people who know. And he went on to say, for the people who believe, there's plenty of evidence. For the non-believers, there will never be enough evidence. And for the people who know, none of it matters. And to me, that was just, wow, really profound, because there are going to be people that you can't convince. And there's going to be other people who have seen it or had that experience, and they're knowers. They're not just believers, they're knowers. So it's like seeing a flying saucer for the first time. When you see that, you become a knower. You become a knower that there's something out there. And same thing with Bigfoot. I think once you see him, I would like to add too that, I think me and Joe, for the most part, are flesh and blood type believers. There's all kinds of theories out there now about Bigfoot, whether he's a dimensional creature, or he's a flesh and blood creature, or an alien, or whatever. It's interesting. It's very interesting that the night we had our howl, we also had the flying saucer hit us with the light. So I mean, that's kind of interesting when you put those 2 together like that. But I've always thought kind of flesh and blood. But I have to tell you, Jeremiah, that we have found 1 footprint and then nothing else. But the footprint was so fresh and so big, and right there, you could see the toes and everything in it. But there was not another print anywhere. So that leaves you scratching your head a little bit, like, why am I only finding 1? Why don't I see a trail of these things? Trail of footprints, just 1 print. I have to admit, that's kind of odd, and that kind of leads into the other people who are the dimensional, believe he's a dimensional creature or that sort of thing. So I can't explain when we do catch 1 print, which we have. I can't explain that. But.
So if you think that we're looking at a flesh and blood creature, when you have like a, you're trying to think of what we're dealing with, are you picturing like an ape-like creature, or maybe something that's, some kind of human ape mixture? Or
Jeremiah, we'll have to, did we send him our pictures?
I think so.
We might have sent you 4 pictures of different cryptids. One of them looks like a gorilla. I mean, flat out. Matter of fact, this is a true story. We were doing a presentation over at the Big Muddy Festival for the Big Muddy Monster. And there was a lady come up to us, and she was what was she? Primatologist. And she looked at that picture that we thought looked like a gorilla. And she did too, as a matter of fact. And she said, look at the tufts on its shoulder and everything and all that. She goes, yeah, this is a primate. And she says, can I take a copy of this picture? So Joe sent her a copy of the picture. And the very next year, we were again at the Big Money Monster Festival doing a presentation. And after the presentation, she came and caught up with us. And Joe asked her, he said, hey, what's going on? How'd you like the picture? She said, well, I sent it out to all of my colleagues, right?
Right.
And she said the only question I asked was, what is this? And she said they all came back as a primate.
Oh, gorilla.
Gorilla. Come back as gorilla. Well, we don't have gorillas in Hardin County. So what do they look like? I don't know. I have another picture that was taken. As a matter of fact, I took it, and it was probably 60 yards from me, and it's got a face like a human. Hairy, but you can see the nose and cheekbones.
We've actually taken 4 photos that are of creatures, that we consider Bigfoot, and none of them look the same.
Mm-mm.
They actually, all 4 of them, and this is within a 40-mile area.
Yeah, 40-mile radius. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they all 4 are different. They all look
in some way, I mean, they had the features of the conical head and stuff like that, but just different features.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know what they are.
That sounds so interesting. I've been trying to look through my file. If you could send those again to me, I would really appreciate it. That sounds really interesting, especially with the response from the primatologist.
Yeah, the primatologist, when she looked at our photo, I'm just looking at something that says, and I've got an 8x10, I think is what it was, photo in our photo album. We're just showing pictures to people at the festival up there. And she come up and looked at it, and she's thumbing through it, and she stopped right on that page. She was just kind of flipping through, and she said, who took this picture? And I said, I did. And I actually took it while I was on duty at the sheriff's office with something I was dealing with. That's part of our presentation, is these photos and how we got the photos. And she said she's looking at it and really studying it. And I tell her the story, start telling her the story of how I got the picture. And she said, that's a primate. And I'm like, well, it kind of, to me, it looks kind of like a Bigfoot or whatever. And she's like, that is a primate. She said, I have been sent hundreds of photos of people trying to send me pictures of Bigfoot. She said, I'm telling you now, that's a primate. Look at the tufts on the shoulders. Only primates do that. Their hair tufts up. And she said, the chest where it's bare there, you can tell that's, you can tell that's it's bare where it's supposed to be. The legs are short where they're supposed to be. And she said, that's a primate. And so I sent her the picture. And like I said, she sent it to everybody. And she come to us next year. We didn't come to her. Yeah. She come up when we gave the presentation. Next year, we did the presentation on stage. And she come up afterwards and said, I'm the one that she was talking about. And she said that she had sent that to all of her colleagues. And I asked her, I said, what was their response? And she just looked at me and said, they all replied, gorilla. Which was amazing to me.
Yeah, it's insane.
So you took this photo when you were still in law enforcement?
Oh yeah, I was working that day.
We have stories for every one of these photos.
Oh man.
Yeah. I live in Hardin County. It's a small county. There's less than 4,000 people in the whole county. I got a call there was cows out. And so keep from somebody coming around on a gravel road and too fast and hitting a cow. I go out there and they call the person that owns the place, owns the cows, and dispatch does. And I head that away. Well, I kind of block the road so nobody ends up hitting them, and eventually get them in there. And I'm sitting there just waiting on the guy to show up, and I end up getting that picture. I looked up there and thought it was a cow, and it just, because if you notice, there's cows in the picture with it when I send it to you. And the reason being is I just thought they broke a fence up there. So yeah, there's a whole story as to how I got that picture.
I mean, yes, that's another show. It's too much to tell.
Oh man, you guys are awesome.
Honestly, it's this area. We have been very, very blessed in doing this, to be honest with you, because we've done presentations with the guys that said they've been doing it for 35 years and have never seen one. Now they've got other evidence, stuff like that, but they've never actually seen one. So for us to have 4, of course, if you bear in mind where we live in the middle of the woods. We've got a river right beside us. You know, we've got all these creeks and streams and nothing but woods. So we live right smack dab in the middle of where this activity can be. So I think that's why we've been so blessed to see what we saw, and why we have so many stories.
But we look too.
We're always out hiking and looking and recording all the time.
When you were in law enforcement, would you get a lot of calls of people that were seeing stuff and reporting weird stuff then in the area?
You know, yeah, we've had calls that people have called. Actually, out the Garden of the Gods, actually, I know a deputy that got called out there because they were in their tent and they said a Bigfoot was messing with their tent. Of course, he got out there, he didn't find anything. But
you know, there's the fact is, yeah, there's been many stories from police.
Law enforcement. Actually, I've heard stories for years that they've told about things that happened that didn't make any sense, or they didn't know what it was. Well, now, after I've been doing what me and Jim have been doing, what we've been doing, and getting more experience and learning, I look back on those stories and I'm like, okay, well, this makes total sense.
And these are stories that are like he said, from other deputies that were before him. Even we have, this is one-offs. I mean, we hear the story right from the guy, right, who was involved, and these stories go back to the 70s.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
That they were deputy sheriffs in the 70s, and they're telling us stories, sitting right across the table from us, telling us his story. Matter of fact, Joe's recorded some of them, their stories, that, you know, one right to us. This is what I saw. This is what I did. This is what we did. You know,
so this has been going on in this area for a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd heard a lot of these stories just through the rumor mill, through people telling, you know, talking. Well, when I'd hear a story and it involved law enforcement, I went straight to the horse's mouth. Said, hey, here's what I've heard. What's the story? And they've told me, you know, and it's some of it, you know, the story got blown out of proportion when I heard it from the actual deputy. It was honestly better than the stories that were being told about them. And so I've tried to document that and start keeping that. And it's amazing.
We could probably tell 20 or 30 different stories on police, you know.
Yeah, we're trying to kind of, because some of these officers have passed on now.
Right.
So I'm glad stories and go and document them, you know, or if I can keep that.
2 of them passed, I think, since then.
But we started a web on Facebook, and it's called The Sqwatchers, TheSqwatchers. We started putting some of our sounds up on there. We've put some of our presentation photos up there, and we've been putting pictures up there also. So if anybody wants to check them out, boy, feel free to share them or use them, or any question, ask us.
We've been very blessed to have done presentations with like Ron Moorhead, Lyle Blackburn, and So we've been with some rock stars
In the
in
Bigfoot community, yes.
Yeah. So
Scott Nelson.
I was geeking out.
That's awesome. I mean, yeah, we'll definitely have the links for that in the show notes. And I'm just a huge fan that you guys are also able to record and preserve people's encounters too. That I think it's very important that we do that and that those aren't lost to time. So that's a very cool thing that you've been doing as well.
I'm not knocking. I don't mean to sound this way, but with BFRO, we tried to turn our stories into BFRO, and they didn't have the time. I don't know if they get inundated with so much or what, but we just couldn't really seem to get an interest on it. So we just started documenting everything ourselves. That's why I posted those on that Bigfoot mapping project, because
we couldn't get the BFRO to put them up.
But I think honestly, I believe they don't have enough investigators, and they're just overwhelmed with reports.
And the crazy thing is, we've had at least 3 of our BFRO representatives sitting right down here on our deck talking with us, and we've taken them out with us, and we've actually done night investigations with some of them, and still can't get our sightings put up on their site for some reason. It's crazy. I don't understand it.
That's very strange, but I think that you're doing the right thing, where you're just putting it out there yourself, and you're not letting that stop you, and you're just kind of going for it. So I love that you are doing that. I think I found one of your reports on Bigfoot Mapping Project when I was doing some research. Yeah, guys, it has been a pleasure chatting with you, and maybe we can even talk again sometime in the future. It feels like it's just going to get more wild for you, Jim and Joe, but thank you so much for coming on the show, and definitely keep me in the loop with anything else that you guys run across out there.
Yeah, we will. We definitely appreciate you having us on.
Well, Jeremiah, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed doing it and enjoying getting to share how this all got started. And yeah, if you ever want to, do another one, we've got more stories.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list: the Subtle Lake area of Oregon, Rainbow, Oregon, McKinsey Bridge area, Sweet Home, pretty much that entire area, the north part, if you get what I mean. I'll see you back next time, listeners. Sasquatch Summerfest this year, July 11th through the 12th. It's going to be fantastic. July 11th through 12th in Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. And listeners, if you're going to go, you can get a 2-day ticket for the cost of one if you use the code BFS, like Bigfoot Society, but BFS, and it'll get you some off your cost. Priscilla was nice enough to provide that for my listeners. So there you go. I look forward to seeing you there. So make sure you head over to www.sasquatchsummerfest.com and pick up your tickets today.